Hey guys, welcome to another video. Today we are working on, just kidding, still working on the Ford. That's for another day. Getting close, but for another day. I don't know if I told you in the last video, I don't know exactly what happened, or I'm getting all mixed up, but this truck had some major problems. We were messing with it, trying to diagnose the starting issue last night. I told you guys it wouldn't crank with the key anymore. It used to, then it stopped cranking with the key. We were messing with intercooler piping. Seth was doing the trailer lights on it. Kelly was trying to diagnose like why it wouldn't start. And in all of that stuff we were doing together, it completely lost communication with the PCM. And so I was like, we just took two steps back, because it went from having PCM power but no key start to having no PCM power. And so I was just like devastated, right? So started working on it today, and Brody and I spent a bunch of time trying to chase wires. We had Jake looking at it, we had Josh Hadlock come over and look at it, and then Brody came back to the shop after work and we're like, all right, let's just figure this out. So we literally took the fuse box all the way out, started checking powers everywhere. We were on Identifix looking at wiring diagrams, checking fuses, doing pin tests from point A to point B. I took all the connectors apart and cleaned them and dielectric grease, and still weren't getting anywhere. We finally figured out where we didn't have power to which fuses. I'm not going to go into all the great details, but like we went pretty deep into the diagnostic part of like wiring, deeper than I normally go. Like I'm not uncomfortable with this, but I'm also not super knowledgeable at this level, and we figured it out. I'm pretty proud of that. We found one fuse that was blown, and we figured that fuse was blown because there was a relay from the DCS conversion harness that had gone bad. It was a brand new relay, it went bad. I don't know if it was from us testing and messing with it yesterday or what, but we tossed another relay in it and it fixed the problem. That fuse was blown because that relay was shorted to ground. We finally found out that the key-on switched power at the PCM. So we tie into that with the DCS harness. We found out that one was shorted to ground. And so we would test there, adding power to it, trying to power on the PCM, and the power probe would trip. And so when that happens, you know it's shorted straight to ground. So we started tracing through other stuff and then found out that relay was creating a pathway to ground when it should have been opening up. Tossed another relay in it, immediately everything turns on and starts working. Put a new fuse in there, and now it's good. Anyways, I wish I could have shown you the whole process, because like we're probably 3 hours into it or so, and it was like pretty intense. It's hard to film when we're like that intense and like trying to read through wiring diagrams and pin tests. But anyways, it's working now. I'm stoked on that. The key still does not start the truck, but the first thing Jake and I figured out on day one when we were diagnosing why it wouldn't start is that there's a wire that goes from the starter relay to the PCM called SMC, Starter Motor Control. And that wire is not getting ground, which is not allowing the starter relay to activate the starter. Okay, why is it not getting ground? Well, that's the PCM grounded switch that wants to see X, Y, and Z to start the truck, right? Including like the park neutral switch. That's one of the things. Everyone's saying the EGT sensor has to be working. And then there's other data that we don't know. It's still a mystery what all the data is that it wants to see. If anybody knows, please tell me in the comments, because I'm still trying to fix this. So if you know, please let me know in the comments, because I want to know if you know what data that SMC circuit wants to see in order for the truck to actually crank with the key. Anyways, that wire is a yellow wire that goes from the start relay to the PCM, and it needs ground in order to start. So if we take the power probe, we back probe it, put ground to it, the key works to start the truck. Okay, that's what we're going to do for now. We're going to jump a wire out of the fuse box before we put this all back together. Since we're down to this point, and it took so much work to get the relay box taken apart, I'm going to put a ground wire coming out of the side of that, and then we'll just ground it right here to the frame. And then eventually, if we fix that circuit, I can just trim that wire back, tape it up, and then it'll work how it's supposed to. But for now, I'll be able to start it with the key, because it's super frustrating to get out of the truck and then have to jump it over there. I've kind of given up because we're on such a short timeline. I can't spend 3 or 4 days trying to figure out this one issue. Maybe in the future I'll have more time to do it, but not right now. Anyways, long-winded speech, but for now we're just going to jump that yellow wire out to ground. It's going to start with the key. It's going to run. No more problems with that. Then I can move on to finishing the intercooler piping, finishing the throttle stuff. I'm going to add a second fuel tank in there. We got to put the bed back on. We got to do all that stuff. But it's pretty close to being done. I think you missed this, Brody, but earlier, remember the thing that was hanging out, the cooler? It was like dangling out front. Yeah. I mounted it up and I just had to extend that just a little bit and got it all to fit in there. So now all the coolers, the whole front end is bolted together. That's all done. We've got this one other intercooler pipe that goes from here up to here that we got to finish. So I'm going to cut this and then get that welded together. Then all the intercooler and hoses and everything are done. We have, oh crap, yeah, this is in the mail, so that should show up. I still don't have the release thing. I'm telling you, I'm gonna tie a piece of wire to it and just pull on it with a string. Kelly style. Kelly, help me out. We have problems with the AC lines. We did fix the heater hose. It was kind of short, so we actually routed it a little bit better. We still have to fit the air box, which I can't do until we get all the AC lines done. And like one of the AC lines that threads together, it kind of strips, so I may have to replace those 2 lines. That's kind of a whole big mess. But we're getting really close either way. I'm gonna put this all back together, and then tomorrow I'll get back to filming again. I think this is it for tonight, but tomorrow I'm gonna mount the tank right here. We measured it out, I think we can fit it. I gotta cut all this stuff out. We gotta mount that up. I was able to find this locally at AutoZone. This is a fuel tank switch between primary and auxiliary tank. So if I run all the hoses through this and wire this up, I should be able to switch it from inside the cab electronically to make it switch between the primary tank. We'll call this the diesel tank, and the other tank, which will have anything besides diesel. That's the Back to the Future tank, where they put garbage and all that stuff inside the car and somehow it runs. That's what that tank's for. That's the garbage tank. But I found this, so I'm pretty stoked on that because I'll be able to wire that up and make it work. I really just want to get all that done so we can put the bed back on and get it off this lift. So yeah, that's that for tonight. Everything seems to be working here. We had the security light flashing before. We had everything kind of freaking out on the dash when that had tripped out. And let's see, I put this back to stock. We were messing with this last night, and so now that the PCM connected again, I was able to go and put this back to stock. Tune has been successfully programmed. Turn key off. Okay, let's turn the key off. Done. All right, guys, we're back again. I cut the bumper on today. Pretty easy thing to do, but like, it just makes the truck look super cool. So I wanted it looking cool. We still got major body alignment issues. We found some issues with the truck itself, more than just being able to adjust it. So that's something I'm gonna deal with a little bit later. But if you look right here, you can see that it's separated. The welds aren't great right there, and it's definitely pulled apart a little bit. And it looks like, if you look down there, those bolts don't line up. And you can see they were already touching the threads on that side and on this side. So like the whole thing's pulled apart. So we're talking about like ratchet strapping it back together and bolting it, and then maybe putting some tack welds in there and whatever. But I've got so much other stuff to do. Like that's gonna have to wait for a little bit, because as everyone knows, you can always hold a hood down with a ratchet strap. Anyways, on to the important stuff. I cut this out today. This was the spare tire well in order to put this tank in here. Brody and I were able to get this tank fitted up. We have some interesting brackets that we did here. We went across the back and then just put, these are cut off U-bolt studs, and so we just welded some studs in to hold that part of the tank. We ended up not going the way we were talking about sideways. We turned it the opposite way that it came out of the other truck. And now we're about to do the same thing in the front. We're just gonna drop some studs down so we can bolt those in. We got good clearance on everything. The exhaust is gonna be a little bit of a challenge. I didn't want to go in front of the axle, but I may have to do that just because of this fuel tank. I don't want the exhaust touching the ground, and I don't want to have to be really close to the tank. So maybe we can fit it next to. I haven't really looked yet. I was just thinking about that. That might actually work. I would prefer to have it exiting back here, you know, for noise and style.
Yeah, but here's the thing. That's a steel tank, so it'll heat up this oil tank.
Oh, that's brilliant. So I should bring the exhaust back and then like do a loop-de-loop under it, and then
we call it an O-pipe.
What's cool is that fast pump has provisions for coolant hoses, so you can heat the fast pump and then have the oil going through it. And since it's a return system, once you're on the freeway, you just start heating the whole tank up, and yeah, smart man here. All right, so I'm gonna tack these up. We're gonna get this going. Once that's all bolted in, we can run the fuel lines kind of how we want them. We're gonna do a filler straight up through the bed. So this is a Subaru lower radiator hose. We'll cut it off to length and then just have it sticking through the bed, and then we might use this RCI fuel cell mount up in there so we can just dump the oil straight in there. This doesn't need to be a vent for filling since we're not using a traditional filler. So I'll probably run this actually to the front of the bed, and so if I put a 55-gallon drum or eventually get a big oil tank in there, I can just drip feed it into here while we're on the road. Is that pretty straight? Straight-ish. If I actually needed a whole can. Kind of eyeballing the straight up and downness of it. That's a verb. Hey Josh, I can still mount tires faster than you.
I'll lose that bet. You want to build these end bars for me?
Never mind. You're faster than me.
You can't mount.
All right, let me give you guys an update of what's been going on. I've been trying not to be so boring in my videos, so I'm trying to film less and talk more, right? Because talk is boring. Just kidding. So I got this tank mounted. Had some interesting brackets. Ended up using some Power Stroke 7.3. I'm not gonna tell you what those are. If you know what those are, leave it in the comments. Most of you guys know what those are, but some of you may not. Though I use those as spacers because we had to space the tank down. The tank has to sit obviously below the level of the frame rail. If it was sitting above it, it would hit the bed rails. So we had to space it properly, and you know, we could have done like a pipe that came down and bent it down and everything, but I was trying to do it quick and easy, and I think this will work just fine. Since we took the spare tire well that held the frame together in the back, I added this plate to basically tie the frame together on the top side. This holds the bottom side together, this holds the top side together. I didn't think it was that important to have the structure up here, but when I realized that there's a lot of load on the rear leaf springs right here, it could potentially tweak the frame, so I wanted to add something to that. And I'm sure when the bed's bolted on, it adds a little bit of structure also, so I think it'll be all right. I guess we'll find out if the truck falls apart, then I'll know that it wasn't all right. So I ran the fuel lines. I plumbed the lines from this secondary tank and ran them to this switching valve here. So I was able to find an electric switching valve. It was actually in stock at AutoZone. It was like 80 bucks. And it comes with a switch and a wiring harness, and basically you have tank A, tank B, or vice versa, either way, and then this goes to the engine. So I've got both tanks plumbed. I haven't cut the lines on this one yet because I still want to drive it in and out tonight. I'm going to go get the right fittings tomorrow and tie the feed and return into the original sending unit of this one. The fuel gauge is working on this tank. This selector valve actually takes the fuel sending unit signal through here and directs it up front, so if you tie into your factory gauge. So I should be able to run the sending unit, the gauge from that one up to here, the signal wire, and then have this, when you actually switch it, it should work properly between both gauges, I hope. I'm gonna try and figure that out tomorrow. I gotta look up some wiring schematics on the vehicle that came from. And then of course the feed and return here, one's gonna go to the fast pump, the other one's gonna go to this return line. So I gotta buy some fittings to get all that worked out, but that's about it for the dual tank setup and switching between them. I'm really happy that I was able to get this piece. And the fact that it was in stock at AutoZone means if it ever fails on the road, it won't leave me stranded. I'll be able to go get one at a local, you know, parts store somewhere. The trailer lights and everything should work once we get the bed back on tomorrow. All the shocks are blown out on this truck. That's something I want to address, but I'm not at that point yet. Another thing, so this will be our fill for the secondary fuel tank. I'm gonna cut this off and then flush mount it with the bed, so we'll be able to fill it from there. And this tube, I ran it up along here, and it's gonna come up into the bed. That way I can have another fuel tank in the bed with a little valve on the bottom. I'll probably use a 55-gallon drum for now and just strap it in there for this trip. And then I'll just have a valve on the bottom I can open, and it'll just drip fill that tank through that hose. So I'll be able to top that one off from the upper tank while we're driving. That way I can take another 55 gallons on top of all this of the, I'm gonna call it alternative fuel. we'll be able to take a bunch with us because that's the type of fuel that we can't get on the road. So the more that I take with me, the more money we save on the trip. But I'm gonna call that a night. Oh yeah, one more thing. I did buy 2 new batteries for this truck. It's not something I do very often. I usually scab together like old batteries and stuff, but I did find 2 batteries. The guys at O'Reilly hooked me up, so I got a super good deal on the batteries. I was talking to Mitch about fitting the front end. Nothing really lines up, nothing really fits. Sorry it's so dark. But that's something I need to address also. We were kind of both thinking this truck was probably wrecked at some point. There's some spot welds that are out and like nothing lines up very well. The bumper bracket was kind of bent. And so we'll probably end up wallowing out a bunch of holes and just shifting stuff around to make it fit. And that's a project for another day. I'm still waiting on my hood release cable and all that stuff. And then I got to finish the intercooler pipe as soon as possible, and then run my intake, AC hoses, stuff like that. But we're getting really close to being done. So I'm gonna get back to it tomorrow. I'm not gonna close this video out yet. That's a good looking car you got there.
Yeah, I bought it in Japan.
Woo! See you guys tomorrow. All right guys, so I skipped a few steps again on the video. I got the bed on here. I got the hole cut for filling the auxiliary tank. So I'm gonna put a flange on there with a filler, but that goes straight to the auxiliary second tank. And then if you remember, there's a hose that comes up here. I gotta move all this stuff in the drill, so we have the auxiliary filler for the auxiliary tank that's gonna come up through there. I've still gotta put all the new bed bolts in, get that stuff lined up. But before I bolt all that down, I'm gonna get a couple guys to help me kind of scoot the bed and line it up so it sits pretty square on the truck there. I got the new throttle cable in today. Well, I got it a couple days ago, but I'm finally ready to put it in. I don't think I showed this part. We had to file a square hole. Let me get that out of there. Had to file a square hole in the firewall. It actually came out really good, and it lines up perfectly with the pedal under there. And then, so I had the old cable in, and it was all broken and wire tied together. So now that I've got the new cable, I can push it in there. Where are we at there? Fits in there really good. Cool. And then this is what was broken on the other one. The end of this was blown out, so it couldn't pull on the cable. So if you see, I've got it wire tied on there. So I got to remove that junk, get this one on there, and it also comes with a new lever arm. I'm not sure exactly why or whatever, but I'm gonna put it on since I got it. That goes on the P pump, and then the throttle cable clips to that. So I think I'm gonna mess with that next, get that all tidied up, and that way we got the throttle working well. Then I can set all the return springs and check some stuff on the P pump, make sure it's working well. And then I'm gonna move on to doing the intercooler pipe. Once I get the second intercooler pipe on, the taillights work on the truck now, I can actually go test drive it tonight for real. Get out on the highway and see how the transmission shifts and whatnot. Still dealing with AC lines. I haven't got all that stuff figured out yet. I've got to cut and modify one line, and then I need to replace these other lines that got stripped out. So that's still on the to-do list, but I can't really put on the intake air filter until I have the AC lines fixed, because they all run right there where the air filter stuff has to go. All right guys, so I've got a lot of work done on that truck. And this is the first time driving it. I'm gonna drive it home. I think that squeal under the hood is the alternator. But this is really my first time driving it outside of the neighborhood. And it is 4 in the morning. So the likelihood that I'm gonna get pulled over is very high. So let's see what happens. So far we've done absolutely zero transmission tuning with diesel conversion specialists. We're supposed to email back and forth some logs and stuff like that. This is the first time I've driven it, so we have not done any transmission tuning or base logs or anything. This is just exactly how the trans was tuned when I got it. The shift points are pretty crappy. You got to rev it out to like 25 to 2800 to get it to shift. And so if I just want to cruise up to speed, it won't shift. I have to kind of hammer down the throttle just to get it to go to the next gear, then back off the throttle. So that's kind of my first impression. It's not super loud in here. The suspension rides terrible because of being lowered, and you guys saw in the last video how the airbags worked out. It wasn't ideal because it's basically riding on the airbag bump stops when they're deflated. The truck needs shocks. I ordered some. They should be here tomorrow. I'm gonna put shocks on it. Hopefully that helps a little bit because the bushings are blown out in the shocks. So basically it's not really controlling the bounce at all. So even though it is riding like really low and really stiff, I think the shocks will help out a little bit, at least when I'm riding unloaded. I'm guessing when I put a trailer on it, it'll drive a lot better also. But it's not super loud. That's what I'm impressed. I think I could talk on the Bluetooth phone connection in here without any problem. It's not, let me step on it a little bit. Yeah, and that's with no air filter. I still haven't put the intake in, so this is just open intake. So when I put the airbox and stuff in it, it'll be a little bit quieter, which it doesn't really need. And on top of that, I just put the exhaust on it, which seems to help out a little bit because it goes and puts the outlet of the exhaust past the rear bumper instead of in the middle of the bed. So far so good. I'm gonna put the phone down before I get arrested. So this is the second time I've ever driven this truck, and it's doing pretty well, but it's already got called into duty. We gotta tow the Civic back to the shop. Let's see how it does. Rope towing a car. This is the purpose of a truck, right? The only reason I have a truck is to tow other things. So putting it to work. All right, so we towed the Civic earlier. Now we found out that I've got another tow job. Literally, I'm testing out the truck for the first time ever, like on a road trip. I'm going from Salt Lake to Portland. A couple things we did. We got some stuff sorted. Got the secondary fuel tank. I've got extra oil on board. We filled up oil in this tank from my reserve oil supply over there. I didn't have time to mess, so I was gonna do the front wheel bearings, didn't have time for that, but the QA1 shocks showed up. I just ordered these on Summit. This is the same thing I did on my Dodge. I just measured the length of the truck, ordered these up, they showed up the next day, and I had no idea. Lifetime warranty, huh? So I'm gonna throw these on real quick and then hit the road. I think it's safe to say that this thing was pretty well used up. This top nut was not even tight, so there was slop there. The bottom bushing's blown out. There's not even a metal sleeve in there. So like it was just banging around in the bottom there. So there's a ton of bushing play. And let's compare lengths and see how it stacks up to what I got. So the QA1s are just a little bit longer, but not much. And this was traveling like about here, so there's still gonna be enough travel on this. Obviously the shaft's not fully extended yet, but as far as the body length, like just a little bit longer. So I think this is gonna work out just fine. All right, so the lower bushing that came with those QA1s, I didn't do a good job measuring it. They were too small, the inside diameter. So we found some bushings from something else. What were those bushings from, Jake? Like a Subaru something or other?
Oh, Toyota Tacoma rack and pinion.
Oh, yeah, so Jake found a sleeve that was longer, so I cut it in half, chucked it up in the lathe. So the inside diameter is right for the truck. This one's wrong, but the outside diameter of this is right for the truck. So we're cutting this down so the outside diameter fits inside of the lower mount of the shock. So hopefully that all works out. And so I cut it in half, was able to make 2 out of it, and we'll cut it down and then see if it fits on the truck. All right, so the top one, these bushings weren't as bad as the other side, but you can see the bottom's just blown out completely, like no chance. So when it goes up and down, the bushings have to move at least a ½ inch before any of the suspension does its job, other than the spring, but nobody cares about the spring. But luckily this is an easy job, and they come off pretty quick. And this one should go back on pretty smooth. After we did the custom lower mounts, that slides right on. And of course we encountered 0 issues along the way, right? How'd you do this, Brody? On the other side. Oh, just like that.
Yeah.
Go gadget. Shock. So they are just slightly shorter, but not much. I just took some rough measurements and then ordered like a size that was close, and it looks like it wasn't too bad. All right, I'm gonna drop it down a little.
It's not on air, is it?
No. I just got helper bags in the rear.
Yeah. I'm sorry, Braden.
Not air.
Yeah, you won't overextend it, man. What made you decide to build a Cummins, bud?
It's a good truck. Good engine.
Great truck. I'm proud of you.
Okay, I'm gonna go all the way down. Cool. All hooked up to the trailer and time to hit the road. Got extra oil, got some tools, got a jack, as much stuff as we could to be prepared. And now that the truck's running, I'm like, I really wish this interior was in good shape. I also put the wipers on. Never had wipers before since I owned it. Let's see if they work. Nice. Also, the fuel gauge is backwards on this, so when I'm on the aux tank, full shows empty. So the truck is showing empty right now. So I'm gonna try and find out the limit and see where it runs out of fuel. Hopefully it travels all the way to full, so I get a pretty good range. All right, so unfortunately, we started our journey on this to go to Portland, and as you can see, this is where the truck was just parked. There's a ton of oil leakage, worse than I originally thought. Enough so that the whole tailgate was covered in oil. There was some oil on the trailer, and I've done this before, towing with an oil leak, and it just makes a huge mess. Aside from that, there's some noise coming from the front left wheel, and I kept checking the temperature like of the front hub, kind of feeling through the wheel, and it didn't feel great. And so I was like, it wasn't super hot, but it also, one side was cold, one side was not cold. And so I was worried that we would have a wheel bearing problem. And since I've had 2 wheel bearing issues on both the trailer and my Dodge in the last year, I became concerned that that would be an issue. So it wasn't worth the risk. We put about 200 miles on the truck tonight, and so I got a good feel of like how it drives and what needs serviced and all that stuff. And we ran it on veggie oil, or not veggie oil, we ran it on waste motor oil, and it ran pretty good actually. And so got kind of an idea of that. Haven't really checked fuel economy yet, but you can see the oil spots on the tail light, and kind of just not great. So I decided to call it. We were gonna drive the 12 hours each way to Portland to deliver this car and some other stuff, and it just wasn't worth it. So it was a tough call because I'm not one to usually give up on things and like, you know, say, hey, like, let's not push through. But it's midnight, we were about to start the trip right now, and with all the things that need to be done, and especially dripping oil the whole way, it wasn't worth the risk of like, what if all of a sudden we have a catastrophic oil loss and like lose an engine? Not worth it. Not worth it at all. Fix it properly. This is where I usually like don't catch myself, and I'm like, oh, let's just do it. Let's do it. We can make it happen. We'll just keep pouring oil in it. Not worth it. This is like my dream truck. I've put a lot of time, effort, money, everything into this, and it's not worth it. I'm changing my ways. This is a different chapter in my life. Not worth it, right? It's hard for me to say that, but not worth it. Not worth it. Not worth it. Just call it quits, fix it right, and then go on the proper road trip. So everything else like is comfortable, has good power. I had to take off one of the 3 throttle springs. I got to mess with that a little bit. We're taking off the entire P pump to change the tappet cover on the side of the engine to get the oil leak resolved. So when I have the P pump off, I'm going to check all the linkages in the spring and do that stuff all properly. And then I'm going to install cruise control, because with the 3 throttle springs, my foot was actually starting to hurt, like legit. On the 200-mile drive, my foot was like tired, and like the bottom of my foot hurt from pushing the throttle so deep. The transmission is not working great. I need the trans tune from DCS. I'm waiting to hear back from them. I emailed them after they closed tonight, so obviously they didn't get back to me in the middle of the night. So hoping that shows up tomorrow or the next day, then I can put the proper tune on it and see how that feels. But I got enough mileage on it right now to know how great it doesn't drive with the stock transmission tune. So I'll be excited to see how well it drives after I get that back. That's about it. I'm really concerned about this front left wheel bearing. I bought wheel bearings, didn't do them today. It's kind of deep in there to get the cap, what do you call it, the bearing cover cap thing off, the grease cap. That's going to be a challenge. But we did put the front shocks on and it drives great. With 40 pounds in the bags and the front shocks turned all the way stiff, this thing rides like, it's stiff, but it's comfortable. It's not like uncomfortable jarring or anything. A couple bumps we hit and there was enough weight on it that it bottomed out, so that makes me a little bit concerned about putting the 3-car wedge on there if the airbags are going to be enough to actually support the weight of that trailer. So I got to figure that out sooner than later. Maybe I'll have to double bag it. I don't know exactly what I'm going to do with that, but I hope that's not a problem. But I'm going to say that's the end of this video. Thanks for watching, guys. Thanks for keeping up with it. I'm a little bit defeated tonight because, like I said, I'm not one to give up on a road trip like this, but not worth it, right? Not worth it. So stay tuned, guys. We got more to come. I'm gonna start working on the drift car this week. I'm finally I'm over working on this truck. I love it. I'm glad I did it, but I want to be working on my drift car. I need to get that going because we got about 2 weeks before drift week and clutch kickers after that. So 2 weeks of prep. I'm trying to finish the JZX 100 and my pro car. So if that doesn't work out, then I got backup plan over there. Once again, thanks for watching, guys. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and really appreciate you guys watching and all the comments and all that stuff. So catch you guys in the next one. Bye.